The 2000s was the peak era for power forwards in the NBA. Of course, you had Tim Duncan, the greatest power forward of all time. You had guys like Pau Gasol won a couple titles with the Lakers, other dudes like Chris Webber and Rasheed Wallace as well. But the two power forwards during this era with the closest legacy have to be KG and Dirk.
Yeah, both have one title, both have one MVP, both have about the same amount of All-Star appearances as well. So let's go through both their careers and break down who we think was the better power forward.
Before we start talking about who was better, KG versus Dirk, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on any new videos. So we'll start off by recapping each of their careers real quick. Kevin Garnett drafted 5th overall by the Minnesota Timberwolves in the 1995 draft. He became the first player since 1975 to be drafted straight out of high school. Of course, like right after then, this was kind of like a thing in the NBA. Of course, Kobe, other players as well. And he was drafted to a Timberwolves team, just straight ass.
Yeah, I mean, 6 year of existence, didn't have a 30-win season. I mean, classic expansion team that doesn't hit the lottery and get Shaq in like their 3rd or 4th draft.
Dirk, on the other hand, he started with a franchise more established, but also not in a good place either. I mean, the Mavericks had success in the 80s. You had Mark Aguirre, Rolando Blackman, Sam Perkins, but by the time Dirk arrived, all those dudes were long gone. He was taken 9th overall in the 1998 draft by the Bucks, but they traded him to the Mavericks for Robert Traylor, one of the all-time worst draft day trades. We've already made a video on that.
Yeah.
And really the big difference between Dirk and KG throughout their careers is the Mavs did a much better job of surrounding Dirk with good players, where KG, on the other hand, he got some help later on, but never had much help in Minnesota.
I mean, Dirk early in his career got Steve Nash, and when you're a big guy who, doesn't dribble the ball off the floor, not many better players to have as your point guard than Steve Nash. Like I said, KG got some help later on, but for the most part early in their careers, it was Dirk that had all the help. And what's so impressive about these two guys is how quickly they turned their teams around. Like KG, just his 2nd year, got Minnesota their first ever playoff appearance. Unfortunately, got swept by the Rockets in the 1st round, and then for the next 6 seasons, the Timberwolves would never get out of the 1st round. 2004, finally their big breakout year. Top seed in the West, KG wins MVP. You got Sam Cassell and Latrell Sprewell giving him support. Got out of the 1st round, beat the Kings in that 7-game thriller in the 2nd round before falling to the, Kobe, Shaq, Malone, Peyton, super team Lakers in the conference finals. And then after that, KG and the Wolves just never got back to the playoffs. I mean, he was still one of the best players in the league, but the supporting cast just slowly fell apart. I think around this time also, the Wolves had to give up like 3 1st-round picks.
Right.
Yeah, because they illegally signed Joe Smith.
Right.
If you're going to legally sign like Kobe or something, that's worth 3 firsts you had to void for Joe Smith.
Yeah, just a very poorly run franchise during this time. Back over to Dirk, also led a very impressive turnaround. Hit a bit more help, like we said, Steve Nash, Michael Finley. By just year 3, he led the Mavericks to 51 wins, got to the 2nd round of the playoffs. In 2003, they make the conference finals, but fall to the Spurs. And even after Nash returned to the Suns in 2004, they remained an elite team. In 2006, they make the NBA Finals, face off against the Heat. They were up 2-0 in the series, but they eventually fall in 6 games. In 2007, they were incredible as well. 1st seed in the West. Dirk wins MVP, but then you get upset by the We Believe Warriors in the 1st round. One of the biggest playoff upsets in NBA history.
Dude, nothing's sadder than watching the clip of like Dirk having to accept his MVP award after they've gotten eliminated by the Warriors, and he's got to act like, oh, yeah, like it's a great honor. Like I think the quote, like he's walking and he's something like, it's a great day.
Yeah.
Obviously disappointed. That's a terrible Dirk impression, but like he's like, yeah, great day, I won the MVP. We lost in the 1st round to a 42-win Warriors team.
I mean, credit for at least showing up.
Yeah. I wouldn't. Yeah. I'd just be like, I sit on my couch and be like, you can mail it to me.
And for the next few seasons, the Mavs were always a good team, but never seemed to have any playoff success. Garnett, on the other hand, would be traded to Boston, forming that super team in 2008 with, of course, Pierce and Allen. Had the greatest single season turnaround in NBA history. KG wins his 1st and only Defensive Player of the Year award.
Crazy that he doesn't have more than that.
Criminal that he doesn't have more than that. Celtics beat the Lakers in 6 to win their 1st title in over 20 years. KG caps it off with the anything is possible
young Jason Tatum got an idea.
I just got an idea.
He saw that and he took some notes.
But KG and the Celtics were never able to repeat the success of 08. He got injured in 2009. Honestly, if he doesn't get injured, they probably go back to back.
I agree.
Yeah, 2010, they get back to the finals, but they lose to the Lakers in 7 games. And by 2011, the Heat had formed the Big Three down in South Beach. And as good as the Celtics were around this time, they weren't getting past that juggernaut from Florida.
And speaking of that Big Three Heat team, after beating the Celtics in round 2, beating the Bulls in the conference finals, surprisingly, they matched up with the Mavericks in the NBA finals. And 5 years after losing the Heat in 2006, Dirk gets his revenge in one of, if not the most impressive finals wins and runs by a player.
I think it is the most impressive finals run by a player because Dirk up to this point was known as like a playoff choker.
Absolutely.
And he basically completely erased that entire legacy with this finals performance. Like you ask people about Dirk nowadays and never bring up playoff choker. Not anymore. Not after what he did in 2011.
Without another all-star on the roster, like you had some guys a little bit past their prime and Jason Kidd and Sean Marion. Jason Terry was phenomenal. Tyson Chandler, shout out to him.
They had a very good team, but to not have a single other all-star,
crazy.
That basically wraps up the peaks for both stars. I mean, they made a couple all-stars in the years after, but Dallas kept swinging for the fences with free agents, so they were never able to really get a consistent supporting cast around Dirk. Dallas actually never made it out of the first round after they won the title. And, eventually they draft Luka, Dirk retires. KG, on the other hand, a couple more runs with Boston, had that one big playoff run in 2012 where they almost knocked off Miami, then gets traded to the Nets, quickly becomes washed, like almost overnight it felt like. And now, of course, we got the new NBA Twitter wash meme. It's KG with the Nets. So eventually goes back, retires in Minnesota. So start talking about these guys on the offensive side of the ball.
First, we'll start on the offensive side of the ball. Very different play styles. Kevin Garnett, more of your traditional power forward offensively, post guys up, back guys down, the close hook shot and everything, but he also did have a very solid post fade and he had a pretty deadly mid-range jump shot, especially like later in his career, he really relied upon that. But early in his career, a lot of pick and pops, rarely ever shot 3-pointers, really wasn't a good 3-point shooter. But the one thing I think he doesn't get enough credit for, underrated passer, leads the Timberwolves in assists in 03 and 05, kind of played like this point forward role after they basically didn't have a point guard. They lost Terrell Brandon and Chauncey Billups in 02. So overall for KG, I'd say like underrated offensive player, especially his peak in Minnesota was very good and very underrated passer.
Yeah, his peak was really good in Minnesota, but it was also pretty short. And it's really tough to see him as a first option offensively on a championship team. We'll get into the other side of the ball, but just purely offensively, like he was good. Wasn't amazing by any means. It is always a trip to go back and watch early 2000s ball where guys are constantly shooting mid-range jumpers and be like, bro, if you could just take like a couple steps back. And I don't buy the whole excuse, like DeMar DeRozan has said this before. It's just like, I can't shoot threes. Like, yes, you can. If you can hit a long 2-pointer, you can hit a 3-pointer too. I know it wasn't the style at the time, but if it's like that one Walter White meme where, you're yelling, but the window's up so you can't hear. It's like, KG, step back, a foot or two, take a 3, it'd make you so much more of a diverse offensive player. But I tend to agree. Underrated, but not gonna blow you away by any means.
Dirk, on the other hand, during the 2000s, one of the best offensive players, just straight up. And in my opinion, the greatest big man shooter ever. I know people will say Towns, and maybe Towns is better at shooting threes, but if you throw Dirk in today's era, he's knocking down threes like crazy.
Well, Towns is better at shooting wide open, uncontested threes, maybe.
Deep threes.
Dirk is better at just shooting the ball. Like, we'll talk about it in a sec, but like his post game, like his post fade, the Dirk shot as it was coined back in the day, and also his 3-point shooting, like Dirk hit contested ass shots.
Well, he shot that to the moon.
He did.
Like, he shot that so high.
And there's something about that arc on Dirk's shot where he just tosses it up there and it comes down straight through the hoop. Like there's something about it, like aesthetically pleasing about it,
Yeah, but he still was, your 2000s player. He made his money in the mid-range, just like his up fakes would get guys in the air. He could hit and ones in the mid-range. If you bought for the fake, he's blowing by you. Like underrated first step to get to the hoop.
Underrated ball handler too.
He was, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, like you said, the Dirk shot, like apparently he didn't do that early on in his career. Like you can find some kind of clips of him doing it, but he developed that shot later in his career, and just, it's so deadly because he was so good at it. And how do you contest it when he's got his knee all the way up in the air?
Well, I mean, nowadays he might get dinged for offensive fouls here and there trying that, but genuinely, I think it's one of two unblockable shots in NBA history. Like it's the Dirk shot and it's the Kareem skyhook. Because what are you gonna do? He's 7 feet tall. He's like leaning way back, and yeah, he's got his knee in your face. Like unless you like go around him and try to get him from the back, which you're not gonna have enough time to do, you can't block the shot. It's not physically possible.
Yeah, absolutely torched the Heat with that move. And we talked about KG's peak kind of being short. Dirk's peak offensively was a decade, like legit 2002 to 2012. He was one of the best offensive players in the league, just straight up. So obviously, as you've probably figured out, Dirk's the better offensive player. KG underrated, you know, the gap isn't massive. It's not the Grand Canyon, but there is a gap there.
Gap on defense, though, this is the Grand Canyon.
It is.
It might be bigger than the Grand Canyon. We'll start with KG. I mean, flat out, one of the best defensive players in NBA history. I mean, we started watching basketball like in the late 2000s. He's one of, if not the best defensive player we've seen in that time. I think I still might take prime Dwight Howard over him, but it's close.
Yeah, I mean, KG was just so versatile. I'd love to see him defensively in the modern NBA.
Oh, jeez.
Dude would be Evan Mobley on steroids. You could switch out into a point guard to guard, you know, that's not really a mismatch because his strides, his lateral quickness for his size was just absolutely insane. Like there are better rim protectors, but the speed and agility he had, there's not many 7-footers that can match that.
Also worth pointing out, maybe played with the highest motor in NBA history.
Yeah.
The most intensity. Like you could tell every time KG's out there on defense, like those crazy eyes he'd get, like you could tell he is giving everything he has.
Well, bro was dripping sweat about like 50 seconds into every game.
Yep.
Also great defensive IQ. Only won one Defensive Player of the Year award in 2008.
Criminal.
I mean, I know he finished second a couple times to Mutombo, to Dwight, to Ben Wallace, 9 defensive first teams, 3 all defensive second teams, but dude deserves honestly like 3. I don't know what year, I'm not stealing from anyone, but the fact that he only has 1, like you said, criminal.
Dirk defensively, average at best, and that feels generous.
It is.
I mean, we were able to find a couple of articles from back in the 2010s suggesting like, ooh, when Dirk's off the floor, actually, the Mavericks defense is not as good, but I remember watching the guy play live. Dirk was a great player, but defense was never his strong suit. The best thing you could say about Dirk is that he was a big body.
Yeah, but 7 feet, like not a great rim protector. Talk about a mismatch on the perimeter. If he got switched onto a guard, it's probably barbecue chicken.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, at best, we're giving him average. I think later in his career, he developed more on that side of the ball. Good rebounder, at least. So comparing a guy who's one of the best defensive players ever to a guy who's just average, like obviously there's gonna be a massive gap there. Final category we'll look at today is just the legacy, you know, the aura, the intangibles. First, let's look at each of their championships. We'll start with KG. Formed what I say is the first modern Big Three. It was known as the Big Three at the time. Like a lot of people think of the Heatles as the first Big Three, but this Big Three came before them, and then the Heatles were kind of counter to them. You had Ray Allen, KG, and Pierce joined together in 08. Best single season turnaround in NBA history. They win the title that season. We've touched on this before in the 08 Celtics video. Not dominant in the playoffs though.
Not at all.
A 37-win Hawks team pushes you to 7?
Yeah, that's the worst one. Like getting pushed to 7 by Braun, even a Braun with not much help on that Cleveland team, like that's fine. Getting pushed to 6 in the conference finals by the Pistons and Lakers in the finals, like okay, that's fine. 37-win Hawks team pushes you to 7 in round 1. I get it's your first playoff series with everyone together, but like not a good look. And like as a whole, this team, they played only 2 less than the maximum amount of games they could play on their way to the title.
Yeah. I mean, they did get it done though. Like, can't take it away from them. They beat Kobe and LeBron in one playoff run. You got to give them credit for that too. But one piece of hardware Dirk has that KG doesn't, Finals MVP. Pierce won Finals MVP, and it was pretty close between like him, Garnett, and Allen, but Pierce averaged the most points. He guarded Kobe. He won the award.
You do got to wonder though if the voters were swayed Pierce's way by his theatrics in game 1.
They might have when he shit his pants.
Yeah. Well, no, when he hurt his knee.
Right.
Yeah. Dirk's finals run, though, I mean, I think it's the best in NBA history. I mean, we've seen some great runs, Kawhi in 2019, but this one, you take out a decent Blazers team in the first round. I mean, we're biased, but, a pretty solid 48-win Blazer team. Brandon Roy, LaMarcus Aldridge, not bad. You sweep the defending champion Lakers in round 2, one of the most shocking sweeps in NBA history. You follow that up by taking out the KD, Russ, and Harden Thunder in the conference finals, and then you cap off your run with one of the biggest finals upsets in NBA history, probably the biggest one since the 2004 finals when the Pistons knocked off the Lakers. And in this whole playoff run, up to this point, Dirk kind of had a rep as a playoff choker, and he was spectacular this entire run.
Just an incredible run. Like you said, I haven't seen a better finals run watching the NBA. It was just magical, and the fact that he took down that big 3, just absolutely incredible. He didn't have another all-star on the roster.
And he took down Kobe, and he took down KD, and the fact that the Mavericks even were able to mentally recover from that game 4 against the Blazers in the first round.
Yeah.
You have that 23-point third quarter lead, you have an 18-point fourth quarter lead, and you blow it. The fact that they didn't melt down from there and went on to win the championship, unbelievable.
Looking at their MVP seasons though, this goes to KG, and it's not close. 24.2 points a night, almost 14 boards, 5 assists, 2.2 blocks, 1.5 steals a game. You lead the Wolves to the top seed out west, make it to the conference finals. The most successful season in Timberwolves history. Could have easily won unanimous MVP, but somehow this always happens. Jermaine O'Neal gets 2 votes, and then Peja gets 1.
There's always got to be one dumbass out there.
Gotta ruin it.
Dirk, on the other hand, I mean, pretty good stats. 24.6 points per game, 8.9 boards on 50, 40, 90 splits. Mavericks won 67 games, by far the best record in the league. But it all goes to waste when you lose to the We Believe Warriors in the first round. We talked about it earlier, but just the visual of him accepting the MVP award after his team has already been bounced from the playoffs is just, it's sad.
Yeah, like we said, it's just sad. It feels depressing. It just feels weird. Yeah, good season, but even then, KG's season, disregarding the playoff success, was way better. Final verdict, who you picking? Who's better, KG or Dirk?
It's so tough because if I was doing this in a vacuum and I said just pick the player that'll make your team better, I might be tempted to go with KG, but that 2011 finals run for Dirk is just too much to overlook. That's what Dirk is at his absolute peak, and I think Dirk at his absolute peak is better than KG at his absolute peak. Dirk offensively is better. Defensively, he's a big body. He's not the best, but he's not the worst, and I feel like especially, we didn't really talk about this, but in clutch moments, in moments where I need a bucket, there are a few guys that I would trust more than Dirk Nowitzki. He's a better shooter, he's a better scorer, he's better in clutch moments. It's close, but I would have to go with Dirk.
Yeah, KG's the better two-way player, but I gotta go Dirk as well. That one finals run alone,
you can't look past it.
Yeah, before then, I remember I was thinking KG's better. No, that finals run was too special. Offense is always gonna be more valuable in the NBA than defense. One of the best offensive players I've ever seen. Special player. I had to go Dirk as well. So what do you guys think? Who was better? Do you agree with us that Dirk was better, or do you think it's KG? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and hey, while you're here, check out some of our other content as well, and don't forget to subscribe to Synthetic Sports.